Yeah, definitely. Really good unit twos, and again, it could be if you have it laying around and you're trying to figure out something with regards to maybe you don't have the right synergy for your Guild Wars defense. You definitely can play around with like a YOLO comp if you prefer. But again, it's kind of an option, I guess. We'll have to see if I lost my train of
No worries.
thought. Oh, fail, fail, fail. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Childish. We're back at it again with the next episode of Educate and Dominate, that one-on-one interview series where we take some of the top names of the game and get their insights so we can bring your game to the next level. My next guest is definitely one that people may not know about, but you got to learn today. Let me tell you something else. We got ourselves one of the leaders of the top 10 guild on the global site, Kindred Sakes. Wingzies, how's it going?
It's going well, and you?
Oh, I am doing good. I'm doing good. Let's get that milestone out of the way. The first female guest, yay! Can't get enough. Can't get enough. So, for those that are new to the channel, welcome to the channel. The Educate and Dominate series is what we do, bringing people on board so we could teach you guys everything and anything when it comes to this game. Now, we got a couple of things in store for you today. Going to be talking about some specific units. Going to be talking about some of her units. But before we get into that, since Wingsies, a lot of people don't know you from the forums, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us how you got into video gaming in general, and then how you found yourself in the Summoners War.
Sure. So, like a lot of kids growing up, probably I just played a lot of Game Boy games, started gaming through that way. And then in middle school, my friends got me hooked onto MapleStory, which then translated into League of Legends in college. And then eventually, when just got like busy with school, I was like trying to find ways to still game but not have to sit in front of my computer all day, which is then when I like switched to mobile gaming. Kind of downloaded Summoner's War just for fun in June, like right after it was released, and got hooked pretty early on and have been playing it pretty much exclusively ever since.
Man, oh man. And so when you get into Summoners War, obviously Kindred Saints at the time wasn't built. There was a couple of guilds, prior to that that you might have been in beforehand. Can you kind of lead us into that, how you got into those original guilds and then found your way into Kindred Saints?
Yeah, so Kindred Saints, or the Kindred Guild, was with the merge of Exodus and Fallen Blossom, named after Chasun, and it was back on the original Summoners War forum. A bunch of us just decided to form a guild for fun, and then when Guild Wars was released, started competing like for the top ranks. With like the EU server merge, with the EU server, a lot of us like lost members, and we were having issues with like swords not being used. So we decided to merge with Exodus because they were losing some people as well. And since then, we've adopted some people from Aftermath, adopted some people from Disbanded, and now we're up to 4 full guilds.
It's crazy. I was just talking to Malfish the other day, and I just can't believe like you guys have to be the only guild out there, the only community out there that are doing 4 guilds. I know our guild, our community is going at 3, and we're done. Like that's it. We ain't going to pass that. Sorry for anybody that's looking to join us, but like 3 guilds is enough. But man, that is something else. That is something else.
Well, Malph's a very ambitious person, so who knows? There might be guild number 5 and 6 in the future.
There you go. There you go. And so, for those that weren't familiar with you from the forums, you actually do some articles, writing some articles for the forums and whatnot. So, can you talk a couple of articles that you provide for the community, and what your kind of future plans in store for that?
Yeah, so I wrote a bunch of guides on like some of the monsters that I own, like Seara, Tor, and then I did like a complete TOA overview guide with like all the hard floors. Kind of hasn't been updated, but we just switched to a new forum, summonerswarhub.net, and we're hoping to continue writing some articles there. Probably won't be released on the regular schedule we had before, but hopefully we can bring some interesting content for the viewers.
Gotcha. And from what I understand, the new website, the summonerswarhub.net, should be, kind of in the works, and hopefully here in the near future. Do you know how much time they need, or?
Yeah, so like a beta version of the site is up with like some of the most basic features, and we're in the process of re-uploading all of the articles that we had in the past. So hopefully within the next week or two, it should be up and like running fully, but people can already sign up at this point.
Gotcha. And you were mentioning some of the units that you currently have in store that you wrote some of those articles for. If there was one out of all the articles that you would recommend to the community, or maybe a common unit that some people take for granted, what would that article be and why?
Oh man, I don't even remember what I wrote about. Um, Honestly, I can't think of anything at this moment because a lot of them are outdated.
Gotcha.
So hopefully, when we do get the new site up, we can revise some of those to make sure because the meta's changed a lot
Right.
since the couple
And
months
it
that passed.
and that Seara one, was that pre or post nerfed?
That was pre-buff.
Ah, okay, okay,
So
cool. Yeah, because I'll be definitely looking for an article. I did read the original one, but considering all the changes that's been made, that'd be a cool one to get if you get the opportunity to write that one for
yeah,
sure.
that's the first one I plan on updating because
I
my
like it.
opinion and builds for her have entirely changed since that buff.
Gotcha. Let me see here. I'm kind of going over the units right now. We got some units to discuss when it comes to attack bar manipulation. But before we get into that, I'd love to always point out, the units out there that just kind of stand out, some rare units or whatnot that people don't see time and time and again. I think that topic would have to go to your Lydia here, the Dark Polar Wing. Continue to talk a little bit about this unit and how you've incorporated it into your arena and guild wars.
Sure. So I pulled Lydia pretty much immediately after the Polar Queens were released. She was from my TOA 90 scroll, and I had like the most frustrating time trying to make her work because at that time the meta was super dominated by like your Bella, Darien type monsters. So she's a dark nuker, which gives her the advantage of being like neutral, so she can attack whoever, but also she tends to be attacked by your common death break monsters. And I didn't have a Chloe at that time, so she kind of like sat in my storage for a couple months, and I just brought her out last week and re-ruined her for Guild Wars. So my original Guild War defense was Seara, Orion, and Theo, but I wanted to free up Theo for another team, so I tried throwing in Lydia just as another neutral attacker because her third skill, which applies the brand debuff, synergizes pretty well with Sierra's bomb,
Okay.
since that actually amplifies the damage. And so it's like together, if they choose to nuke the same person, it's at least a 45k probably nuke. And so I was just testing it out, seeing how it does on Guild War Defense. I'm not sure I really like it at this point, and she doesn't have the greatest runes, but we'll see. Every time I just like try to revisit her and make her work, but it's kind of tough.
Yeah, yeah, you got to make do with what you got, and you're definitely doing it though. But it's kind of funny. I was just taking a look at your unit here, rocking the Violent Blade. If there's one criticism I've seen, or that I can point out for so many people, is that even for players to kind of take a look at some of these units that we're going through, notice that she's still using blade runes to get the stats they want. You see so many people out there that see the top end players, and they see all the violent revenge or despair nemesis, whatever, whatnot, on a unit that is based on damage, and you're trying to take advantage of the crit damage, attack, crit damage, attack kind of setup. It seems that you still go out of your way to make sure that you use the subset of the blade runes that you can to make sure that you get that crit rate threshold that you need in order to get the job done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if I had the runes, she would be on like revenge or most likely will, but unfortunately I don't. And I want her with at least 80% crit just because I'm running a speed leader and not a crit leader. So
Right. Right.
that's why I'm like sticking with the blade runes. Like obviously if you have the late game runes, but it kind of sucks when you see people with like Nemesis as an offset and they have like 50% crit on like their damage dealer. Like that doesn't really work.
It doesn't, yeah, it doesn't. And so, with regards to these units and essentially quote unquote having a 15% kind of crit rate advantage or whatnot, what is your, if you were to kind of let the beginners that are listening to you right now and say, hey, I'm looking to making an attack based unit or whatnot. A lot of people have various opinions about how much crit rate should they use, and of course, beginners are not going to have the amount that other people have. But if you were to kind of give a blanket recommendation, what do they shoot for if they're trying to go for that crit damage on the fourth slot?
I personally like at least 80. It's just because it feels like every time you don't crit, it's like you have 80% crit, but it feels like you have like 20% crit.
Hmm.
And so as high as you can get it. I mean, ideally, you actually want your nukers to have 100% crit, whether that's like with a crit leader or like by itself. But sometimes you can't really give up the crit damage or attack or whatever stats for it. So I aim for 80 at least on my nukers. And I think that generally is like a pretty good threshold to make sure you're not screwed most of the time.
For sure, for sure. Let me see here. I was gonna say, oh, I didn't even know. I just noticed that you recently got this one here. Was this a new pool or no?
No, I've had Aschubel for a while. The only reason I haven't worked on him is that he really needs skill ups. His third skill, which is the sleep, has a really, really long cooldown.
Yeah.
And so if I actually wanted to use him for a TOA hard, I would need like Chimera or Mav or something if until I can get the skill up. So I'm hoping with the new HOA changes, they'll bring back Soph, HOH, and I'll actually work on him. But
Right.
until then, he's just sitting there.
Yeah, and it's kind of a shame because he said to me that the sleeping is so strong, but with regards to the TOA, hard meta and trying to clear boss stages, it seems like the AOE, CC kind of approach with the dots or whatnot is kind of the way to go, and it's kind of hard to utilize a unit like this with sleep when you're going to be knocking off the sleep, after one AOE hit. So if you end
Yeah,
up
I can see it like being useful on occasion, but at this point, it's like you don't want to build like 10, 15 units just for TOA hard, right? So I'm trying to get through on as little units as I can. I didn't clear it last reset, but the reset before that, I cleared TOA hard. So I'm not super motivated to work on him at this point, but maybe one day.
Cool. All right. So why don't we go ahead and get into the main topic of the day? We're going to be talking about attack bar manipulation. Now, for the people that are listening, they're going to be like, "Oh yeah, I already know about Bernard and I already know about Orion, Childish, and Wingzies. No big deal, right?" But one of the things that Wingzies wanted to talk to me about was not the units that we kind of take for granted. Some of the units out there that people don't really realize that are super strong, not just for the first turn, but for just overall attack bar manipulation out there. Obviously, it's a very, very big aspect in the game. So, without a doubt, let's go ahead and start with the one that's the easiest to get, out there for anybody out there listening to this, Kona.
Yeah, so for the longest time, I actually didn't have Chloe and Chasun, so Bella and Kona were essentially my only healers. And like, I love Kona. He's definitely my favorite two-star monster and definitely one of my favorite farmables. So for like the longest time, my combo was a Deathbreaker, a Nuker, and then Kona to move right after my Nuker so he could resurge whoever that was for like double the damage with the to get essentially another turn.
Right.
And like right now, he's ruined a little bit differently for a different purpose, but I think it's like it's a great way to get essentially more damage without sacrificing like a cleanse or a stun or another like mini heal. So even though, especially in Guild Wars, where you can only bring 3 monsters, bring Kona with his research essentially lets you bring like 2 nukers, even though you're only bringing one.
Right. And from what I'm understanding, for the people that don't know, with regards to Konamiya's AI, Konamiya will always research the person with the lowest attack bar. So if you set your damage dealer to be right, to go right after, or excuse me, right before Konamiya, then essentially Konamiya should always research that nuker, right?
Yeah, that and it works pretty well in dragons as well, and like all around. It's like not as reliable on defense because if he gets a violent proc, then he'll research himself. But in general, like for at least dragons, it works really
All
well.
right. So with regards to Konami, I think we're wrapped up on that. I have to get in touch with this next unit here. Let me see if I can pull it up for you. We're going to go ahead and hit up the Wind and Fire Horse. We'll go ahead and start with the Wind one here.
Sure. So the Wind one, his third skill is like similar to Kona, and it's one way I use Kona as well. So a lot of times in this current meta, it's all about like speed, and sometimes you just can't get that speed on your nukers just because you need the attack, you need the crit rate, you need the crit damage. But like essential monsters like Kona and the Wind Horus let you get away with having less speed on them. So, for example, I don't own a Wind Horus myself, but I know guildies who run like Wind Horus and Copper to make sure he, isn't super slow and can attack before like the enemy wipes their team. And I used to do the same thing with Kona, whereas my Seara used to be a lot slower, and I would research her to make sure she moves before the enemy nuker. And so it's like another way to get more turns with your nukers, and also to make sure they move before the enemy's nukers move before, but while not losing any like important damage stats.
Gotcha. And if you were to go ahead and dish out like a general recommendation to the people listening, as far as what you would, how you would ruin it, what would be the kind of go-to thing for you? Think?
Probably just depends on the team you run, but similar to like a support character like speed HP. I don't like with some accuracy substats if I remember his kit correctly, but that general kind of support type build.
Gotcha, gotcha. Cool. And with regards to from going on from the wind to the fire, any big changes that you would make when it comes to the runes, and anything to add that you want to with regards to this particular unit versus the wind one?
It's like similar as well. With like fire, you have the option of running a bit more defense on it if you want it for more damage. But I essentially think that horses are interesting because its first skill is similar to Hua's first skill, and it really like disturbs the enemy's combos because we talk about like speed sinking your monsters a lot.
Yeah,
And a lot of times people are like, oh, your Bella or whoever your Death Break is should be, one speed faster than your nukers. But if you can like push your attack bar back, that ruins the entire combo. And so it like ruins the effectiveness of their defense just from this like one small thing.
definitely. Cool. And since we're in the fire section, we'll have to hit up the one and only Miss Hua. Definitely a fan favorite of a lot. Let's talk about this unit and how it's kind of played a vital role on your side, and rune recommendations on your end. What do you think?
Yeah, so Hua was my first nat 4, and I'm so happy I got her. Just sorry. I'm really happy I got her just with everything that she's been able to help me with. I think her rune build really depends on how you want to use her for TOA, especially TOA hard. On this current rotation, at least, a lot of people do some combination of like speed, def, HP, and then for dragons, speed runs, or for necro, you see a lot of attack crit rate attack or attack crit damage attack. And then if you want to use her as like a speedy nuker, then attack crit damage. I mean speed crit damage attack
Gotcha.
with violent something.
And you made the comment that a lot of people are gonna. I know they're gonna have to like rewind and replay it. You talked about how vital a unit like this can be for TOAH. So can you kind of talk about maybe some of the typical boss stages or just typical stages in general that you found Hua extremely beneficial?
I think for newer players, the boss stages are like ones that you can just nuke down without worrying too much about like the side bosses for like some of the easier stages. And so Hua's like a good way of controlling attack bars, like double OGs. She's like really good for controlling those monsters as well. And then for mainly the boss floor of TOA 100, like the easiest way to beat it is with like a Hua and attack booster combo, whether that's like Bernard or Verd, just because you make sure the boss doesn't move and it doesn't really matter how much damage he would do and how much debuffs you stack on him if he's just not going to move.
Yeah, it's crazy. I actually I don't remember how many months ago. I think it was like the fourth season in TOA. The first time I ended up beating TOA normal 100. It was with Hawaii, and I was actually able to auto the boss, and I couldn't do it with any other team. We still had people at that time, taking 30 or 40 minutes to kind of clear it, but anybody that had a Hua could essentially, semi-auto the first, few stages coming up, just targeting the units that they want to target, and then like literally auto the boss. It's crazy how OP this unit is when it comes to boss stages.
Exactly. You don't have to worry about the AI. One of my guildies who cleared 2A 100 hard didn't have Hua, so he had to manual it with like the old Arnold kind of comp and spent like an hour doing that, and just way too painful.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Let me see if I can get back to your setup here because I know that you actually have one of the units here that we wanted to go ahead and discuss. The Taor, the Water Chimera. So, tell us a little bit about that. How long ago did you have that, and the different specs that you've been playing around with that one?
Yeah, I've had him since, well, I have two now,
I
unfortunately.
saw that. I saw that. Yeah.
It was just, I was like pulling for a Chloe and I spent like 3K stones. I didn't get a Chloe, but I got a second Teor. So, I mean, and YDCB keeps hyping up this double Teor setup for Arena. That's super good. So I'm like waiting for that and seeing if I'm going to build my second Teor. But I've tried a lot of different builds. I think the good thing about Taylor is that he, like, if you, especially if you pull him as a unit early on, he doesn't need the greatest runes to be able to do dragons or to be able to do farm 5 on hell. So I ran this like pretty awful setup on him. Swift, blade, attack. It was speed, attack, HP, which was pretty awful. But he was still able to clear 5 on hell, and he was still able to do dragons. I think my ideal Taylor is just Violet Blade with ideally 100% crit rate, just
Right.
because he gets the speed buff off of his second skill if he crits. But right now, I'm not quite there yet, and he's running on an offset just because for my combo, I need him a little bit faster, and I can't get that with a blade set.
Gotcha. And essentially, like you mentioned, really when it comes down to how you're supposed to be using them is where your runes are going to lie and whatnot. But for those newer people coming on board, you're talking about your recommendations. Are you going to tell somebody, hey, let's play around with attack or damage attack, or should we focus on the speed if we do have the skill that's going to be provided as a speed buff on two?
I think it depends a little bit on your setup. I really like this with more speed just because I like having first turn on him. So I run a lot of Galleon, Teo, or Bernard kind of comps. And so if he's too slow, then he can't match up with a buff. I think attack, crit damage attack is fine. You technically nuke harder, but you don't get in as many turns. And I think you actually want more turns with him because the amount of utility he provides with his third skill with the freeze and the slow is like pretty immense. And that's something that you want up as often as you can.
Gotcha. And then when it comes to trying to sync them with the rest of your team, is it? I mean, obviously you're trying to go for that first turn as far as syncing it, but is it really, really important to try to sync it, considering that you're going to be going back and forth with your overall speed at the end of the day, because you're going to be coming off the Swift buff and coming on to it? What do you think?
Yeah, so that's like the difficult part. That's actually why I switched my Bella to Nemesis to better keep up with Taylor. So my issue was that Bella would move and then Taylor would squall and then he would move before Bella. So I switched her to Nemesis to actually push her to more or less be continually like faster than Taylor. And I think that's like one of the challenges of using him is that you do have to like worry about that sync a little bit. I think Nemesis runes help a lot, and also he just does a lot of damage that most likely the number of turns you have in a fight won't be that many, hopefully, and you can get away with like a little bit of out of syncness if you can just kill 1 or 2 enemies within the first like 2-3 turns.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And with regards to the rune recommendation that you provided, with regards to Terra, could we say that this would be the same for any unit that is rocking the Squall on too? Would that be the great recommendation to go for, you think?
Yeah, some people run like crit rate on 4 if they don't have like enough stats, which I think is fine too. But I'm personally just a fan of the speed crit damage attack for all Squall Chimeras.
Good deal. All right. Speaking of some of these units that you utilize in the PvP aspect, I was curious as to maybe you could talk about like one or two of the compositions, the universal compositions that you like to use for the arena and why.
Sure. So one that I run, so I don't really have a wombo comp for Rush Hour yet. So I'm currently running Chiwu, Orion, Taylor, and Theo. And like the idea is like Chiwu is like the speed leader and gets rid of any will runes, and also I usually use him to nuke out all the Theos we have in arena right now, first turn. And Orion's there as like my attack booster. I know there's like some people are like, oh, why Orion? Like, why not Bernard? And the reason why is like he actually speeds up the fight with his armor break later on. So, which is why I like running Orion more than Bernard at this moment. And then Theo is usually to take out like any wind monsters like Chasoon. that you see a lot, and Teor is like to nuke it down pretty much everyone else. It's like pretty fast clears. I think usually I manage like 45 seconds to like a minute, just over a minute clears. Obviously, it's not as universal as some of the other comps, but it's done well for me so far.
Cool. And it's funny that I was just taking a look at the Orion. You see a lot of people go back and forth when it comes to the theory crafting and talking about the strength of an Orion and going back and forth between violent and swift. Me personally, I'm a big fan of violent, but I can see the strength of a swift set when you're really trying to get that edge in the first turn and you're controlling it on the arena offense. What's your take on the rune subsets? Would you like violent or swift? And is there any particular reason why you're going this route, or is it just that that's the runes that you have?
Partially because if I ruined a violent Orion, it would be like 180 speed. Another reason is that I think for arena defense right now, it's the meta is like all about first turn.
Right.
If you can't get first turn, you're basically guaranteed to lose because everyone runs like speed Lucians or like Tiana wombos or some other kind of wombo, and so which is why like almost all the Orions in arena defense right now are swift, and mine's actually like relatively slow compared to a lot of them. You see a lot of Orions pushing like 250, even 260 speed.
Yeah.
But for Guild War defense, I think Violent Orion is a lot more powerful just because you have a lot less monsters, so you can't run the exact same wombo comps as you do in arena. And I've been screwed over many a times by a violent Orion.
Gotcha. Cool. And I did notice that you are rocking an Ethna here. You all have it roomed up. Again, guys, for those that are tuning in, take a look. All of our units have like 75% crit rate. You know, that's standard. Better get to it. But have you been able to play around with her in the arena per se, or is it just kind of a Guild Wars unit for you? Where you been using her and why?
So I tried in Guild Wars, and I think I'm like 1 and 4 in terms of Guild Wars successes with her. So kind of gave up. But she's also not ruined for that. She's on a vamp set right now. I've been using her as a farmer in Aiden Hell, and also for Dragon's B10 for like a speed clear team, just because like the vamp set also helps her survivability. I think the problem with Ethna is that she doesn't really provide much else as a nuke. Like, there's not as much utility for her, and like, so there's like no point using her over someone like Theo, for example. Like, sure, she
Right.
can stun, but I have Seara who also stuns with her bomb, and so I don't really see any use of Ethna right now. I'm hoping they'll give her another buff besides like that pathetic 7% damage increase buff, but we'll see.
Cool, cool. And the last question I have for you, since we were just talking about Ciara and possibly doing an article in the future, you wrote about Ciara and how she was pre-nerf. You definitely have an interesting setup here. Some people use it, but most people don't even know about it. So, can you talk about the strengths of her and why you feel that the violent, speedy, hard-hitting Ciara is kind of the way to go when it comes to people trying to utilize her for PvP?
Sure, I think you're starting to see a lot of Sierra like pop up in arena nowadays just because like you have to have immunity to counter her. Like, there's really no other counter. I'm sure like a lot of people felt that struggle when she was the TOA 80 hard floor. And with like my current setup, again, it's like to match my attack boosters, I need her fast. Some people prefer the crit rate, which I think is in many ways like better for like offense because you actually get more turns that way.
Sure.
But for like that first turn purpose, I needed her fast, and I think like with Violent, I've definitely seen like videos of my own Guild War defense or like other videos where she just keeps going and going, and she lands like 2-3 bombs on like the enemy before they can move. So it's like definitely a really fun monster to use. She's along with Chiwu is like my main Theo killers right now. Um, and I'm really happy for the buff because she was my first Nat 5 and only Nat 5 for the longest time.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm so when I came out, I didn't have it, but I don't have it, but I was so happy for everybody else. I had so many people that just they summoned it and it went boom right into the monster story. They just couldn't find a use for it, whatnot, and obviously with the changes, it really made it come out in the meta to play. So really cool that people could take advantage of that. Let me see. I think I pretty much covered all the units that I wanted to hit, but I did want to kind of put out a little segment like we like to call the ones to watch. So, if you had a unit that you would kind of recommend, or maybe kind of have people open their eyes about, as far as units that might make a big impact from what you're seeing and what some of the members in the Kindred community are seeing, as far as possibly being a ones to watch, what would that unit be and why?
I think the new jack-o'-lanterns or whatever they're called are really interesting. I'm looking for a chilling myself. I think for especially like dungeons, they'll be super useful. And then for arena, we've been seeing some interesting metas come up to try to counter like the speed wombo, speed Lucian teams like fire mummies. I've seen a couple of those on arena defense, and then the original queen before Chloe was a thing, Rena, has been popping up. There's someone in my guild who's G3 every week, and he runs Rena in his defense just because it like deters people who don't want to spend like the extra like 30 seconds trying to kill
Good.
a full resist, super high HP Rena. It's just like annoying, and so
Right.
I see more of those kinds of monsters pop up on arena defense with like the way the current AO meta is.
Here's the funny thing, like I really I completely agree, like it's so annoying, but I would love to see like Rena make a comeback and just somehow somebody like figure out a way to like really make it like work. I know we had a prior guest that was actually playing around with a rune setup that gave him Rena like 35, 40k and had, a little bit of crit damage to go, crit rate, crit damage, trying to make it like a bruiser. It was really unorthodox, but it was different, and different is good. It's nice to see, various changes and whatnot, but I mean, everybody still got their 6-star arena, right? They got it in their storage. Why not? Why not mess around with it on Rune Move a Day and see if you can make something out of nothing?
Exactly. Like I've been seeing like the weirdest comps in arena right now. Like someone was running double Huadam, double Chloe, just because it's like, oh, I don't want to waste my time fighting that. And so who knows? We might see a return of Rena. I still have mine at 5-star max, so if that becomes a thing, then
There you go.
6-star is her as well.
We'll have to bring you back to do a unit showcase on your optimum arena setup. Oh man! All right. So moving on, we got ourselves a different segment that we'd like to call like the one thing to change. So with everything that you've seen in PVE and PvP, you've seen a lot of things. Kindred community has seen a lot of things. If there was one thing to change, what would it be and why?
I think it's like not something that I like can see changing per se, but I think the meta right now is not super interesting in arena at least. It's a lot about like can you get first turn and are you faster than the enemy attack bar booster kind of thing, and if you are then you basically win. And so it's like you're really only competing on one thing, which is speed, and like that's kind of gotten a little bit boring and stale, so I hope we get new monsters or new runes or something that like changes that meta. I know it's like kind of getting frustrating just being like, oh, I hope I'm faster than the enemy Bernard or Orion or whatever.
Right. Yeah. The whole destroy runes. I got really excited when it came out, but considering the switch in the meta, it seems like they're not even needed. I still haven't seen anybody rune them up.
Yeah, the only destroy runes I've seen is people with like the light archangel. I'm like, okay, well, if you have that, then
Right, right, right. Yeah. Of course we don't have that. Of course we don't have that. But cool. All right. Let me see here. This is definitely my favorite part of the interview. Epic fail story. We got to get it out there. Tell us your biggest epic fail story in the Summoners War to date.
I think relative to a lot of people, I haven't had like that bad of an epic fail. I think my biggest regret, personally at least, was feeding my second Hua because that was like the meta of like you either do the kneel, like seek, triple water imp, or the double Hua giants run. And I fed away my second Hua, so I was like manually giants B10 for like 2 months until they switched it, which was super painful. I don't know how I did it, but also it's probably why I didn't farm that much giants at the time. So that's probably my biggest regret, although it doesn't really matter at this point.
Right. And so for those that are new to the game, way back in the day, prior to I want to say it was probably prior to like the December changes and whatnot is when it kind of came into play. That was when the Giants B10 or Giants zone, every time you would hit the mob with a critical hit, he would counterattack. Not this, 7 counter nonsense that it's like easy mode now. Right now, back in the day, we had to take 2-star units and just manipulate the game in an effort to to get the runes that we wanted. It was crazy. It is funny because like you hear people, um, and people are like, oh, it sucks because you have to make a team. You have to do this to do that. But they like everybody did it. That's what people did. I mean, it sucked, but it got the runes right. It was a pain, but as we're all grinders, at heart. So the struggle is real.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not a fan of grinding, then this is definitely not the game for you.
Exactly, exactly. Oh man. All right. So, closing out the video, I definitely want to give you the opportunity to give a shout out to whoever you want.
Yeah, so we're at 100 guildies now, which is way too many to shout out. But thanks to all of you guys, because I definitely wouldn't be playing the game if I didn't have you guys to chat with, to just a couple of people in particular, everyone on the management team, Malf, Nick, Zilf, Ani, Mushbeard, Fishguts, Val, Jad, Michael, Day, and Zero, and Eraser, and then also Des, because I promised him a shout out. And everyone who got me into the game, including Asuna, who is my original guild leader, and Zin, who set up the original Summoners War forum.
Cool, cool. And I want to give a shout out there. How do I say it? I gotta give a shout out to you, right, to coming on board. But given the opportunity, as you guys know, has been following the Educate Network for quite some time. This is our first female guest, and there's nothing better than to have the female community in the Summoners War community. We know it's there, but it's good to see them come out and take the opportunity to provide great content, provide some effort. Now that being said, of course you guys know she's been doing this for quite some time with the articles, so I do appreciate the time that you put into those articles and then taking the time to come on board for that channel. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. And then, of course, if we had a call out that you could think of somebody out there, could be a guy, could be a girl, don't matter. Who would you recommend if you do want to bring on board for the next interview?
Well, I do want to agree with the recommendation of Cogmix. I'm interested to hear what he has to say. And also, Carol from Shadowvar is another
Uh,
person that I think would be fun.
yeah, Carol. I think originally when we got a member from Shadowvar a while back, but then we didn't have like I think Carol might have been busy at the time or whatnot, so we had someone fill in. So I think at the time it was actually Terraflux that was a member of Shadowvar before he switched to Malicious. But yeah, Carol was still doing it over there. So yeah, hopefully, Carol, if you're listening, come on board. Let's get it. Let's get it done. Let's get it done. But again, thank you guys all for tuning in. We appreciate the support as always. It's your boy Childish and Wingzies with ChildishPlays checking out. Take care, and we'll see you next time. We're out.